Gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this interview with me here at the CBC building. We are talking about new shows. The Detectives. This is something that I would think of something maybe back in the day in the 70s they would do something like this. This is very cool on, of course we're talking about murders and crime and things like that, but it's just the how you guys have positioned this because it's different people involved. You're going to explain everything, exactly what I'm talking about here.
Sure. Yeah, no, every episode is a different detective, a different landmark case in Canada that has either changed the way law enforcement works, changed things in the community, changed things in the legal system. Every case is very meaningful to the detective, and every case is very meaningful to the community.
How did you come up with this idea?
That's a long story.
I got you standing up, so
a shortened version. My sister's father-in-law is a retired homicide cop in Montreal, and I've been doing documentary for many years, mostly with the military in Canada and abroad. He found what I was doing very interesting, and then one day I got to talking about his career, and I found what he was doing, what he had done in his career, very moving, very thoughtful, and I couldn't understand how this giant fun guy, which he is, actually carries all the burden of these horrific cases. So it got me thinking, with him, we should make a show. And that stemmed this, where you have an investigator recounting a case that they went through that had a tremendous impact on them, tremendous impact on the community, and then had a bigger ripple effect on the overall community in Canada in terms of police work and so on.
How did you get involved with this?
I got a phone call one day from Petro and his team, and they were aware of one of the homicides that I investigated and thought it would be a good story to tell the Canadian public and elsewhere. So I said, you know what, let's go through the proper channels and see if it's okay, because in the RCMP we have a tendency to be very, very reserved. We don't like to open up to too much, and so it was an opportunity for, in this case myself, because I was approached, to give the perspective of a police investigator, in this case from the RCMP. And so Petro and his team, I thought, did a fantastic job. That's basically how I became involved, just because of the work that I was involved in and the opportunity for the RCMP to kind of put ourselves out there and say, you know what, let's open up a bit, explain to the community a bit some of the work that we do, and the sensitive side of being a police officer, the human side of the police officer. And so plus the way that the detectives did their work, I thought was very, very tasteful and told a true story, although some aspects dramatized, but told a true story. And so it was easy for me to buy in to guys like Petro.
I was going to say, how do you ignore the cameras, though, still doing what you need to do?
You have to do what you have to do. And you get up in the morning, and we all have our passions. We all have our pros and our cons. And in my case, it was police work.
Yeah.
It's innate. There are 8 of us in our family that do police work. I was one of 8. I'm now retired. I do consulting work as in law enforcement, and so you compartmentalize. You get good at compartmentalizing. You understand when it's time to focus at the work, including some of the bad things, and then you let go when you go home. You spend time with your family, and you get involved in the community, whether it's activities in sporting, whatever it was. Very, very important, for guys like myself, with the type of stress that we go through, to be able to have that release, and when we're not at work. But it's also important to know that when we're at work, we want to be there, first of all, and we've got that passion to do it. And if you got that passion to do it and that desire to want to work with the community, sky's the limit.
What approach did you want to take with this? Because we've seen other police shows. We've seen police sort of documentary dramas. We've seen shows that try to be realistic. What approach did you want to take with this that would be different from anything that we've seen before?
Sure. We wanted violence. We wanted to show the consequence of it. Like you have in all kinds of TV shows, there's a murder, there's a homicide, and then the story continues. In this particular case, we wanted to settle. That homicide that happened affected a family, affected an officer that got up that morning, affected his family. There is this big consequence to violence. The second thing we wanted to do is we wanted to be a show that opens people's eyes to the fact that cops are real people. They're just civilians that decided to do this job. So they are accessible. They get up in the morning, you read the headlines of a horrible homicide. Well, it's a guy like him, or a woman who gets in the morning, pecks their kids, kiss on the head, they go to work, and then they deal with this. We wanted that. We also wanted to do a show that cops would be interested in watching. that the police community would say, hey, we're being represented properly, our work's being represented properly, our values are being represented properly, and those were really our goals. And through that, we've managed to have a lot of families come forward, a lot of police departments come forward, great actors, actresses, directors wanting to do our show. So that approach has so far really worked for telling these stories.
Did he get it right?
Yeah, very, very important the way he portrayed police officers, because a lot of us, Canadians, they don't understand that we're human as well, and that we have emotions, and all we are is an extension of you folks in the community.
You deal with the trauma.
We deal with the trauma, the part that the community doesn't really want to know or need to know. We wear that at the end of the day, but we are part of you guys. We're part of the community. If we can extend with our common sense and a little bit of training that we have and work with the community, we can solve pretty well anything. In this particular case, the case that Petro here took with the case in New Brunswick, it took us 13 years. It took a lot of patience, a lot of hard work, a lot of patience, a lot of understanding from the community, and a lot of understanding from the family. And I really appreciated the detectives, in this case Petro and his team, how they managed the victims. Because at the end of the day, it's never about the person that leaves you, it's about the people you leave behind. And that's so, so, so important in police work. To show that sign of respect. It doesn't matter what crime or who or what background you're from. Nobody deserves to leave this world in a way that people do in the business that I'm in. It's just unacceptable. So you treat people with decency and you move forward, and hopefully you solve crime.
Gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for this interview. Looking forward to seeing this, and I think this is going to be definitely an eye-opener for a lot of folks out there. Thank you again.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.